Greetings, brothers and sisters of Arkham. Mushroom Jack back again, broadcasting from up here in my Ark. And today, as the last boat sweep the city, I have a tale for you. A man and his family were eating dinner when there came a knock at the door. The man opened it to discover a young woman on his porch, pale and desperate, asking to come in for a meal. But the man was suspicious and refused, returning to the table alone. His kindly wife admonished him, for they had plenty to share. The next night, the stranger returned, asking to come in for a meal. The man turned her away, and again his wife protested his meanness. On the third day, the man came home to find the woman had called early, and his wife had invited her in for dinner. And dine she did, dear listener, upon his wife's flesh. Friends, remain vigilant. Innocence can be treacherous. Resist that which preys on love and kindness, for some evils must be invited in. Arkham, you're tuned into the only dry station in this sinking city, the Ark, with me, Mushroom Jack. Now, how about a love story? Sean and Mercy were besotted and set to become the new Mr. and Mrs. Watson. Their joy for each other remained intact, even through wedding planning. So it was especially cruel that fortune would steal Sean from Mercy's arms, a month before their big day. An act of God, a lightning bolt, and Sean dropped dead. Her grief was immense, and she wept from the moment it happened to the moment he was buried. Now, imagine my surprise when a month later I read of their marriage in the Sentinel. I assumed an error, but when I saw the photo, my blood ran cold. The groom was in a smart black suit, but the bride was in a dirtied gown, her lips upon his rotten cheek. Yet Mercy's eyes were as bright as Sean's were dull, for despite everything, they were together. And you know what? Maybe he was smiling too. Hello, citizens of Arkham. It's 56 degrees out there, winds a nor'easter, and I'm the one and only Mushroom Jack. Now let's talk about Mayor Peabody. Big Joe Peabody sure was something else. Mayor for 3 terms, Arkham born and bred. The kind of fellow who got things done, an unstoppable force. Hell, he even shoveled sidewalks after the blizzard in 22. So when the flood hit, you'd have been forgiven for expecting Big Joe to make it right. But Peabody had met his immovable object. Floodgates that didn't stop the flood, relief crates that were locked despite their essential supplies. No explanation for the water and his town in ruin, Big Joe grew convinced the cause was supernatural. And desperate, he sought supernatural aid. There was a woman, Lorelei, with an affinity for the water. Perhaps if he negotiated, persuaded, pleaded, she would help. Peabody strode into the hotel, thinking his title helped him, but it only made him a bigger prize. Turns out some things can't be bargained with. Arkham, listen close, because it's your one and only Mushroom Jack, and I got a story that'll make you pull the covers over your head. Eric Zan was a talented composer for his masterpiece, but forever dissatisfied with his work. The song of the universe reverberated in his head, but every time he transcribed it, the result was cacophonous. His quest dominated every waking moment, but eventually, the answer came to him in a dream. The problem wasn't the music, it was the instrument. No mere violin sufficed, it needed humanity. Strings of intestine, pegs of bone, a bow of hair. Zan strangled a violinist in his office, second chair, no great loss, and listened as she detuned beneath him. With bloodied hands, he remade the violin in her image. Then Eric took the stage to play for his orchestra, and at last the music sang. Every heavenly note came from a man possessed, vibrating. The piece reached a crescendo until, with a sickening pop, Eric Zan was liquefied. The spell was broken, and his audience wept. Not for Eric. No, but death itself. The song of the universe. If you're hearing this, then you're still here. Good. Now sit back and let Mushroom Jack tell you about a man named Michael. One day, Michael was hiking upon a lonely cliff top that was home to many caves. When in curiosity he meandered close to one, he awoke a beast of nauseating and objectionable form that pursued him in bloodlust down the mountain. Michael ran for the safety of his cabin, but felt it growing nearer. He drew his pocket blade and cut off his little finger, hoping that while the beast ate, he could put distance between them. But before long it caught up, so he drew his blade again, and this time cut off 2 fingers. A hand was next, and then a foot, then the other foot, and a forearm for good measure. But the creature was unreasonable, and it seemed nothing would sate it. At last, the cabin appeared, and Michael staggered to its shelter. And there he laughed, for he had no hand to hold the key, nor eye to see the lock, nor leg to reach it. And the beast laughed too. Good afternoon, friends, and welcome back to Tales of Arkham. I'm Mushroom Jack, here to keep you company till the end. And now, the story of a young boy named Billy. Billy grew up on Crane Street, and a sweeter boy you'd never meet. Now, when poor Billy turned 10, his eyesight worsened until the world was a blur. His mother found a surgeon who assured her that Billy's condition could be cured with a simple procedure. The woman worked herself to the bone until finally she had the money and Billy went under the knife. When the boy awoke hours later, he found himself in a foreign land with skies of green, seas of red, and beasts beyond description. No Arkham, no sign of man at all, until his mother grabbed his wrist and poor Billy screamed in terror. In the hospital, his mother peeled away the bandages to discover Billy's eyes were gone. The surgeon had removed them for his own dark purpose, to peer upon other worlds, and fled. The mother never forgave herself, and the visions haunt sweet Billy to this very day. For no good deed goes unpunished. Friends, Mushroom Jack here again with more words of warning. There was a doctor by the name of Herbert West, who in his search for longer life grew obsessed with death. He was a brilliant man, if an egotist, and single-minded in his development of a serum to reanimate the dead. But the science was imperfect, and his subjects returned as perversions of themselves, if at all. Such work required cadavers, and even as a doctor at Miskatonic University, Herbert hit limits. So when typhoid broke out, he considered it a blessing. And while he did not actively encourage its spread, neither did he try to prevent it. He made dozens of serums with dozens of failures, each of whom re-emerged in the world screaming with agony and malice, until, at last, success. The subject, a boxing champion, awoke with his faculties intact. West celebrated his own genius, even as the boxer rose to point at the doctor. Herbert was confused. Then the door flew open, and his many failures flooded into the room to tear him limb from limb. And when it was done, the boxer smiled and followed his kin into the night. Rejoice, Arkham. Mushroom Jack is still here, making sense of the senseless. Perhaps you've heard of the Whispering Canyon in the hills beyond Arkham? A local Minnie heard a voice on the wind, and followed its call until she found its source, a crack in the sandstone wall. "Free me," it said, "and I shall grant you any wish." Minnie returned to Arkham and, being a persuasive sort, amassed a number of devotees. They worked long days in the canyon, excavating the tomb of something ancient. And as their numbers increased, she grew intoxicated with the power. At last, the tomb was revealed, and Minnie stood before it, ready to release the being within. She had assured them all would benefit from her wish. But as Minnie raised her pickaxe, she requested fame across the land, seeking more of the authority and advantages she had grown accustomed to. The tomb cracked open, and it emerged, a scalding wind that seared Minnie and her followers in an instant. Their flesh stripped from their bones, their eyes bubbled and burst as it blew through the canyon, leaving nothing alive. And the cult of the wind was indeed known across the land as the fools whose bones now litter the canyon floor. Brothers and sisters of the flood, Mushroom Jack on the air with another tantalizing tale. Lyle loved his daughter very much. His wife passed in childbirth, so he raised young Bernadette alone, and there was nothing more important than her. But his wife's death had shaken him and made clear how fragile the world was. Lyle's greatest fear was his untimely passing, and even as Bernadette turned 8, he felt no less worry and sought a way to ensure his safety. He pored through books, spoke to wizened men and haggard crones, and scoured the land for the power he sought, his daughter always at his side. And in an abandoned town, he found a being whose might was obvious, sat upon a throne of polished bone. Through thin lips it offered to extend Lyle's life, to make every minute feel like a day, such that he would long outlive his daughter. Lyle nodded, and it was done. Bernadette's hand slipped from his, and she fell to the ground, dead. Lyle would no longer need worry of passing too soon. And as he wept and wept, every minute felt like a day. Friends, our time grows short, so let me weave one last story to send us out into the night. Frances always felt like her legs had a mind of their own. It seemed that no matter where she intended to go, she always ended up somewhere else. She had to bind herself to the bed at night to ensure that was where she awoke in the morning. Eventually, Frances grew weary of this life. Hoping to understand why her body always fought her, she found an ancient ritual that promised to provide clarity of consciousness. She inscribed the alien runes and spoke the alien words, and then her legs took over. They strolled through fields and forests and icy steppes, arriving at last at a castle of dank stone. Frances climbed the turret to find a mirror. She stared at her reflection, shocked that the room in the mirror did not match the room where she stood. And all at once she realized that that was the real Frances, the real world. The path she walked was determined by another. She wanted to cry, to scream, but her body was no longer hers, and it turned away from the mirror with a pitiless gaze. Arkham, I'll leave you with some advice. Don't become one of my stories. This is Mushroom Jack, signing off.